your 401k. What do I mean by that? Well, when you die, who gets this stuff that's represented over here with the life insurance, the power of attorney, and 401k? Most of you will tell me, well, my wife does. And I'll say, how? Because that's who I wrote as my beneficiary. I designated my beneficiary as my wife. So correct. So when you die, automatically by operation of the contract you entered into, this will come over to your spouse. Now, why am I pointing that out to you? What about this stuff down here? We all know that, as we pointed out, that the beneficiary designation means that when husband dies, everything comes over to the wife. Well, when husband dies, what happens to this little bit over here? Where does this part go? Well, this is what most people don't understand about estate planning. Most people have another important document in their estate plan, and it's called a will. So what does the will do? The will says, when I die, I want my stuff to go to the people that are important to me. My spouse. If my spouse predeceases me, then to my children. By the way, that's what we call a sweetheart will. I give everything to my sweetheart, and my sweetheart passes away before me. I want everything to go equally to my children per stripes. It's not really stripes, it's actually per stirpes, but stripes sounds better. So that's a typical will. And sometimes those typical wills say that if my child is under the age of 21, instead of the money going to them directly, I want it to be set up in what's called a trust until they reach the age of 21. So the money's held in trust until they reach the age of 21. So that's a typical, standard, everyday, run-of-the-mill will that we see. So what exactly does the will control? Well, think about it. If this jointly held stuff goes to the surviving spouse automatically by law, if this beneficiary designated stuff goes to the spouse by contract, yes, that's right. The only thing that the will affects is this stuff over here. That's all it affects. Most people are surprised by that. They think the will affects everything. The answer is it does not. Now, there's another little quirk in New York State law, and it's called $30,000. If this stuff is worth more than $30,000, then what has to happen is that the will has to go through a process called probate. Now, I can hear you already. Those of you who have been through probate, you cringe at the very mention of the word probate, and I don't understand why. It's a really simple set of rules that New York State set up. They want to make sure that whatever you wrote is followed. So the court is very simply just wants to do the following. They want to make sure that this is the original will. They want to make sure that there's nobody in the family of the deceased who has a right to collect anything of their stuff over here. So what happens is the wife, who's a proposed executrix, in other words, the individual who's going to make sure that this is taken care of, has to go to the court, show the real will, and then the judge is going to decide how many people the wife has to send a letter to, and the letter is really simple. The letter is called a waiver letter. So what it says is the wife is going to send a letter down to his extended family, down to his first cousin. What do I mean? Well, they're going to see, does he have any wife? Does he have children? Yes, he does. Does he have any existing parents? Maybe, maybe not. Does he have brothers and sisters? Yes, he does. No, he doesn't. Does he have nephews and nieces, his brothers and sisters' children? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do the parents have brothers and sisters, his aunts and uncles? Do they have children, his first cousins? And the judge will decide that amongst that whole group of people, who the wife has to send a letter of waiver and consent to. Waiver and consent, they waive any interest in his stuff, and they consent to her being the executrix of the will. Now, what do you think most people do with that letter? Well, it's called the round filing system. They take the letter, they say, I don't care, and they throw it in the garbage can. Congratulations, they just contested the will. What about the cousin in Alabama? He says, oh yeah, I remember my cousin up there in New York State. I think he's a rich fella, so I'm going to actually contest because he always promised me his fishing gear. So now you have a contest. What about the people who sign the document and send it back? They're the only ones who don't contest the will. Now, in the world of probate, there's one other thing you have to know. Wife takes the original will down, sends the letters out, the letters come back all signed. Of course, nobody ever argues, right? Nobody ever does argue. No, that's not true. But who's going to get paid to do this? Does the wife go to the court by herself, or does she have somebody going with her? Well, she does. She has lawyers. And interestingly enough, in New York State, between 5% and 7% of the gross estate, that means everything, goes out in court costs, fees, executives' fees, and lawyers' fees. Now remember, wife went down and all those letters came back? All that means is the judge gives her permission to collect all this stuff, and now she has to hold it for 7 months. Before she can distribute anything under the terms of the will, it has to be held out there. For whom? For his creditors. Now, one of the things that we have to understand about estate planning is New York State on your side, or is that New York State a predator? What about all those distant black sheep cousins and uncles and those other people? They're also called predators. So what you're doing over here is you're trying to make sure that you maintain control and protection for your family and push all the predators outside. So now we have somebody passed away, and this is generally asked people, well, what do you think of this system of rules? What do you think of New York State's rule book? Because remember, when you die, if this is worth more than $30,000, your family must go through probate. And some people say to me, Harry, I don't like that. How do I get rid of this? Well, it's really simple. New York State said, if you don't like our rules, then write your own rules. And what we call that is a living trust. A living trust is exactly the same as creating your own little red wagon. What do I mean by that? Well, have you ever seen a little red wagon? You know, the Radio Flyer red wagon? Well, imagine this is your little red wagon. You create it to hold all your stuff. And you are the person in charge of the wagon. You and your spouse are the two people in charge of that wagon. Remember when you saw the introduction to my video? You saw that little wagon go across the screen? That's exactly what we're talking about, is a little red wagon. Now, remember that simple sweetheart what we talked about? I want to show you one of the typical things that happens with estate planning. See, Mom and Dad went to a run-of-the-mill attorney, general practice attorney. He's good with traffic tickets. He did the divorce. He might have done the real estate closing. And he wrote them this will. Remember, I want to hold the money in trust until they're 21? Well, the will only affects this part over here. What about the big parts over here? Assume Mom and Dad died in that car accident and now we have 3 children under the age of 21. Where does this money go? Well, the beneficiary designation that your financial advisor had you fill out said, I want everything to go to my spouse as my primary beneficiary, and my contingent or alternate beneficiaries are going to be my children. So where does the money actually go? Well, what happens is all of this stuff over here is held in a UTMA account, a Uniform Transfer to Minors Act account, until the child is 18 and then released to the child at age 18. People say, well, wait a second, what about the will? The will said, hold the money in trust. I want to make sure they're covered by education. Well, the answer is really simple. Because the money that the financial advisor was talking about and the stuff the lawyer was talking about were 2 totally different things. And because the financial advisor and the lawyer never talked together, what will happen in that case is at age 18, the children will get the bulk of what Dad and Mom and Dad left behind. And what do you think an 18-year-old boy is going to do with $30, $40, $50, $100,000? I call it a brand new yellow Corvette. Wouldn't you call it a brand new yellow Corvette? So if you really want to make sure that whether you have a will or you have a trust, you really want to make sure those things work the way you expect it to, you have to give up, you have to make sure who the beneficiary designation is or give up the ownership. If I take all my stuff and I stick it inside my trust, who now owns the stuff? The trust does. When I die, is the trust still existing? Sure it does. That's why it avoids probate. Now there's one final component to estate planning. I can avoid all the estate's rules, but how do I protect my family? How do I make sure that the things that are most important to me, my granddaughter Sophia, how can I make sure she's protected? Well, one of the things I can do is I can decide to either leave stuff to people directly, say, you know what, I'm going to die, here's all my stuff, here's the dollar bill, I'm going to give you the dollar bill. So what can my wife do with the dollar bill? I leave everything to her, all jointly held and all beneficiary designated. Well, into her life comes Biff the pool boy. Who's Biff the pool boy? He's suave, he's sophisticated, he's everything you hope he wouldn't be, and he sweeps her off her feet, marries her, and then she dies. Who's going to get everything? Biff. Flip it around. Wife dies. Husband meets Bambi the barmaid. You know who Bambi is. Tall, gorgeous, everything you hope she isn't going to be. He has no defense against her. She puts the hooks into him, he marries her, he dies. Who gets it all? Remember, we have this group of people over here, your kids and your grandkids. Do you want to make sure Biff and Bambi don't get it? If so, what can you do with the money? Well, instead of giving to them directly, you can leave the money in trust for your loved one. In other words, you can put it into a locked box, and you can give your loved one the key to that box and say, here's the key to the box. And the only person who can get in that is you. So the Biffs and Bambis of the world come along, they can never get inside the box. If Mom is driving one day and she's not paying attention, she inadvertently runs in the back end of a school bus, one of the kids is a quadriplegic, they sue. Lawyer comes along and says, you know what, I got the suit against you, I want the money. Well, if you left her this way, the lawyer's going to get his cut of that, whatever it is the judgment is. But if you leave it in a lockbox, that lawyer won't get anything. And then there's finally one great predator, and it's called nursing home. What if I end up in a nursing home? What if my husband dies and I end up in a nursing home? Well, if you leave the money to them, it will end up with a nursing home, and your family will have very little money left. But if you leave it inside the lockbox, then your family will have the benefit of everything you left them, and the nursing home will have to look for payment elsewhere. So in essence, estate planning comes down to 4 simple decisions. Decision number 1, do I want to follow New York State's rules, or do I want to set up my own set of rules? Decision number 2, do I want to allow these documents to control my stuff during my lifetime, or do I want my wagon to control during my lifetime? Because remember that blank check? The blank check doesn't affect anything in the wagon. It only affects the things that you own in your name alone. Decision number 3, how do I want to leave my stuff? Do I want to leave my stuff, give them the dollar bill, just give it to them, whatever happens in their life, so goes the stuff? Or do I want to put it in a lockbox that's theirs forever? Decision number 4, if I ever go to a nursing home, do I want to make sure the nursing home can't get my stuff? Because all I got to do is put a lid on my wagon, and then the stuff is protected during my lifetime from the nursing home. Estate planning comes down to those 4 decisions. So think about it in your own life. How confident are you that you and your family control and protect everything during your lifetime, no matter whether you're alive and well or alive and not well? And how confident are you that when you pass away, that what you dream is going to happen is actually going to happen? Or are you relying on this combination of advice from 2 different sources where they never come together? So this has been Estate Planning 101. My name is Harry Scaramella, and if you want more information, you can get it from my website. It's at www.lifelawllc.com. So go to the website, you'll find it, you'll see more videos about other aspects of estate planning. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.